Welcome back to the Behind the Wealth Show. I'm your host, Roger Abel, here with Elias Randall. First, Elias, I want to wish you a happy birthday. I think you had a birthday here a week ago, so happy birthday on the show today.
Thank you.
What, the big 36?
Are you going to sing?
I don't sing and I don't dance.
No, I was hoping you were going to sing happy birthday to me.
I mean, I'm sure Molly can throw some happy birthday music in the background of this show. Did you do anything fun?
No, I turned 36. I don't celebrate my birthday anymore. Got a couple nice gifts from my family.
Good.
But I don't know, dude. Birthdays I don't do a whole lot of celebrating. I actually didn't even know my birthday was coming up until someone said something a few days before. I forgot my birthday was coming up, and I've done that before too, where I wake up and usually my mom calls me first thing in the morning, and
happy birthday.
There's been years where her phone call is how I knew it was my birthday. I mean, I know what time of year it is, but I don't really think, oh, my birthday's on Wednesday this year.
Well, you actually have to know what the date is today and all those different things.
I'm sure I know the date, but just thinking, oh, yeah, it is my birthday.
I get it.
It's just not that important to me. It's just another day.
We had a friend.
Getting older. My body hurts.
We have a friend that Googled himself on the internet. This is a couple years ago, and said he was going to be 60.
How old is he?
Well, at the time he was only 58, but the internet said he was 59. So he kept telling me how he was going to be turning 60.
See,
and then the
internet knows everything.
And then about a week before his birthday, he goes, "Holy crap! I just checked my driver's license. I'm only going to be 59." He was off the internet was off by a year.
Oh, but he thought it was right.
Yeah.
See,
he's like, "I got good news. I realized I'm only going to be 59." That was pretty funny. Just goes to show, don't believe everything you hear or read or see on the internet. I read we getting ready for the show, we try to read a fair amount and bring relevant information. I saw an article, I think this is from MSN, and I want to know your thoughts on this because I have thoughts on this. But half of Americans feel safer holding cash over investments, and I get it. People think cash is safe, but I feel like cash has been sold to people as this great store of value, when in reality, if you've held cash for a long period of time, now obviously, over 3-6 months, a year, like if it's your emergency fund, that's one thing, but holding cash over investing it might actually be as risky as being in the market.
As risky, but well
I mean, because you have to figure out what risk is, right? There's different types of risk. You have market risk. That's what you get with the stock market, right? So you have the risk that your investments go up and down.
Yes.
What's the risk with cash?
That you lose value.
It's inflation
over time.
risk.
Inflation.
It's inflation risk. So those are two different risks. Well, if we look at the historical return of the stock market, the longer you hold it, you've been rewarded. It's been a very good long-term investment. Where cash, if you hold it for the long term, it's been a horrible investment. And, I see things like this.
It feels safe, though. That's what it makes people feel safe because it doesn't fluctuate.
There's 100% the need to have a bucket of cash. I mean, right? Emergency fund, if you have living expenses coming up and you're retired, if you're going to buy a car, like those are the reasons to own cash. Those are short-term investments. But the people that think owning cash long-term is safer than being in the market, you're just taking on a different type of risk that they don't even think about.
Yeah, I do. I agree with all that. I'm thinking, how do you get someone to get out of that mindset?
I can tell you, yesterday I met with a couple doing their financial plan, and they gave us statements of totals, but not like the breakdown of what they actually own, because the primary reason they came here was for us to help them build an asset allocation, and they didn't want us to skew our thinking or give it a bias based upon how they were currently allocated. Fair enough, right?
Yeah, fair
fine.
enough.
I mean,
I can answer that question without having that information.
That's what they want. They didn't want to skew my bias in any manner whatsoever. So I did the financial plan. So everything was cash except for two investments. Two investments they gave me. I happen to know what they were because it was listed on the statement. Okay, so they had about 1.4 million, and 130 of it was growth. But the rest we put in there as cash. Okay, wanted to spend like 10,000 a month. So they got good Social Security checks. All cash, probability of success,
very low,
33%.
Yeah.
And they are like, oh my gosh, that's not good. I said, well, let me explain behind the numbers what we actually did here. But I told them, I said, because I didn't know, I just put it all to cash. So I can show you right away what the risk is of being all cash. So the risk was, hey, we have a 33% chance that we won't outlive our money. Then I went and hit our little solver there for the optimal portfolio. 86% chance if they had the proper asset allocation. So that's actually how you start to show people versus tell people. You show people how cash has risk. Arguably, there's more risk in holding the cash for 30 years than being invested. Their probability is 33. If they get invested, their probability is mid-80s. So that's how you have to quantify it. But in the short term, you're right. Cash is a better investment than the stock market typically if you need the money in the next 12 months because it's a lot safer.
Yeah, more predictable.
Yeah,
you know what it's going to be worth 12 months from now.
Cash is almost opposite of the stock market. The longer you hold it, the more inflation risk you take. The longer you're in the market, the less market risk you take, right? Because we know if you've held something for 20 or 30 years, it's worked out pretty well. Now, obviously, it's not a guarantee what will happen in the future, but I mean, if there's inflation, prices get higher, prices go up of everything. So yeah, just a little food for thought as I read that article.
What's interesting, so that's interesting because with risk and risk management, they bring up a good point. So a lot of times that's almost like the opposite of managing, right? People want us to help them deal with the fluctuations a lot. That's really what bothers people in holding stocks and stock market investments. But there's, right, with every decision, there's risk in every decision, right? Like you could just take all of your money, put it in a safe in your house. Well, you know exactly where it is. You know exactly how to access it, but it's not going to be worth what it is today in 20 years, right? Because you have no hedge against inflation at that point to continue growing to outpace inflation. So it's pretty interesting to think about that because does it feel safer? And that's what this article says, right? Feels safe.
Safer.
Feels safe.
And in the short term, it does. So here's the thing also to realize. I think you brought up a good point. You know, cash comes in different forms. Cash could be cash in your safe, could be cash in your bank, could be cash in a CD, could be cash in a high yield savings account. So if you're going to hold it, try to give it a little purpose. Like, hey, I get it if you have $1,000 sitting in your safe for just the slush money. Hey, if something goes or I need to buy something, sit in my safe, right? Like I know lots of people like that have a little bit of money in the safe.
For sure.
Just to grab.
For sure.
But if, you don't need it, grabbing money, I mean, make sure if you have the cash, you're getting a good interest rate because a lot of the banks, if you just leave it in your savings account, they're not giving you anything.
And it really comes down to like the two basic questions of investing. What is your goal for this money? And what is your time horizon? Right? So if the goal for the money is a down payment on a home, what's your time horizon? 12 months. Okay, well, what investments, right? That can start to, that eliminates a lot of investments, right?
Yeah.
You can start to say, okay, well, stock market, no. Because you could put it in today, it could be down 15, 20% 12 months from now. No one can tell you what's going to happen over the next year. You could go buy a CD. What are CD rates now? Around 4 to 4.5 probably. Yeah. So 12 months from now, it's going to be X, what I put in, plus the 4% interest. And then you just have to understand that, okay, let's say over that time period, okay, the market didn't go down, it went up. It's not really relevant to you at that point because your goal for the money and your time horizon was dictating the proper investment for that money, right? So it really comes down to those two basic questions.
I just thought it was a good way to kick the show off because I feel like people have a lot of cash right now. People who are saying they have a lot of cash, and what's happening?
And in money, there's still a lot of money in money markets too. Like there's a lot of cash out there right now.
Well, and there's a lot of cash coming due. A lot of people started, bouncing and getting into those CDs here a year ago that were paying north of 5%. Well, they're coming due and they're not renewing at 5% any longer, right? They're renewing at something significantly less. So people are going to have to make options on, say, hey, you know what? What am I going to do with it? Am I going to put it on high yield? Am I going to put it in cash? Am I going to invest it? Where am I going to go? So just realize long-term parking of cash typically doesn't yield really great results.
It does not.
So Elias, one thing after last week's show, we actually got a fair number of listener/email questions to us. So let's tackle a couple of them. And I think this one, I've had a lot of questions. I've been doing a lot of work on them because it's the end of the year and there's a little bit of work to be done. But someone emailed in and says, why does it make sense to do a Roth IRA conversion if that means paying taxes before they're due and shrinking the investment amount? I was always taught to defer taxes as long as possible. I'll let you run with it, and I'll add a little bit of color as to what I believe in what I think one of the issues here is. But why don't you tackle it and tell me what you think about why do the Roth conversion now, pay the tax, shrink the investment, all those different things.
Well, this is a very popular question, and for good reason, because most retired folks right now have the majority of their money in pre-tax accounts. I would imagine over time that might shift where investors have larger Roth accounts, but for the folks retiring now, it wasn't that popular. The limits were low and all those things. So they continued to defer, put money in their tax deferred accounts. And this question's pretty vague too. Why does it make sense to do a Roth IRA conversion? Well, the first answer is it might not make sense for you to do it. I actually had someone come in the other day on this topic, and their situation, they want to do Roth conversions to max out certain tax brackets because they want to get ahead of taxes before their required distribution age, which I think are all reasonable thoughts. But then you have to start to factor in the additional cost that it can cause, whether it's paying health insurance credits back or Medicare premiums. So here, I guess I'll answer when I think it makes sense. I think it makes sense if all your income sources dictate that you're going to be in X tax bracket regardless of what you do, and the amount you're going to convert doesn't cause any extra hidden tax or cause extra cost outside of that. But I don't think this is such a simple topic. Or like you go on there's a lot of videos out there on YouTube that makes Roth conversion sound like the solution, and it may not necessarily be the solution. Like the person I was talking to the other day, there's a certain amount they need to take out from their IRA every year. So what their plan was, they were going to do conversion and then take money out of their Roth. Well, the money you're going to live and spend on, right? Take that out of your IRA and live and spend on that. And then if you're going to convert, go above and beyond that to hit your target tax bracket. Because if all the Roth is doing is triggering taxes, well, you're missing the other side of the benefit of leaving it invested in that account to get the tax-free growth. because whatever you paid in tax, it's going to take a while to earn that back.
I think there's two things here. One, on the question itself, I think this individual's approaching it the wrong way. She says, if I do a Roth conversion, it means paying tax before they're due and shrinking the investment. So mistake one here. If you do a Roth conversion, you should have the cash to pay the tax and not withhold the tax on the conversion, because you're then right, you're shrinking the investment. The point is, if you have $100,000 you're converting, you should write a check out of your bank account for the tax at tax time, not take the 100 and turn it into 85. That's not the way to do it. So that's problem one.
Ideally, the shares are going to, right? You keep the shares. They go from your IRA to your Roth. You pay the tax.
The other thing, if you're doing a Roth conversion, realistically, if you can't hold it there without touching it for 10 years, it makes it pretty challenging to make the numbers work out on paying the tax today and not deferring. And you know what I mean? And doing a conversion. I've told people for a long time and had this discussion that the Roth IRA benefits a few people. It benefits the young that have a ton of time to defer the money. It benefits those who wish to transfer assets to the next generation in a tax-free manner, so wealth transfer. And those individuals who know their tax rate is going to be as high or higher in retirement than it is today. Good example. Take a husband and wife. You know, you've got a teacher and you've got a teacher and you've got a engineer making $200,000. Okay, well, they're sitting pretty comfortably in that 22% tax bracket. Arguably, when they retire, it's not likely they're going to be making $200,000 and they'll be in a lower tax bracket, right? I mean, most of those people we see with that income, when they retire,
unless they were just super savers. And
yeah, but even then, like if you're a super saver,
yeah, your
that
lifestyle,
means you're not a super spender. You're not going to spend it. So let's say in retirement, most of their income's in the 12% bracket. Well, then was it really worth it if they started doing a Roth IRA at 55 to just defer the taxes for 5 or 6 years and pay those taxes at 22% versus 12 in retirement? Where
probably not.
If you have a highly compensated individual, let's use a doctor. Well, actually, let's use a business person, because when you own a business, you have no idea when you're going to sell, right? You don't. Like you might say, well, around this age, I'm going to sell, but it doesn't mean you will sell. So now let's say you're owning a business, you plan on never selling. You're making $500,000 a year. You could be making $500,000 a year when you're 70. Well, man, now Roth is kind of a big deal. You don't have to take money out. It's all tax-free, control your taxes. So it's very situationalized as to where a conversion makes sense. But realistically, if you're a young person, you're 30 years old, and it's likely a pretty good deal for you if you can defer this in a tax-free manner today for 30 years. And most people don't have that much money at 30, right? You might have a job or two at the $20,000 401k. Well, bite the bullet, pay the tax, and convert that thing.
So something to kind of tack on here at the end for the younger listeners, if you're a good saver, and depending on income, right? Because we work with a lot of people that have done a great job saving, and they have a lot of money in traditional IRAs, pre-tax accounts, and they're looking at really big distributions, right? When they turn, if you have $3 or $4 million and you turn 73, now you're forced to take money out, whether you need to or not. So I think for younger people, makes a really strong argument to pay your taxes today, use a Roth account, let that money grow tax-free. And then also in retirement, those are tax-free distributions. There's no required, at least at this time, there's no required distribution annually at any age. So you're going to get ahead of that. And then, not that legacy is important to everyone, but if all your money or most of your money is in Roth and invested that way, when you do pass that on, it is going to be passed on tax-free at that time. There's just a lot of good arguments for for contributing to Roth, especially if you're a young person and saving.
So one of the other thing that happens a lot, people inherit IRAs and think that they can convert these to Roth IRAs. It's a question we get all the time. In fact, I had it the other day. Someone inherited an IRA. They said, can I convert that? And I said, well, you can't, because it was inherited from like a parent. It wasn't inherited from a spouse. So if your spouse passed away, you inherited their IRA, you could convert that to a Roth. But if you inherit an IRA from anybody else, you are not able to convert this to a Roth. So I think that's just something to get out there right away. People ask a question all the time.
You could take what you can do is you can take a distribution
and contribute to a
and
Roth.
then can make a contribution to your own Roth.
Assuming you have earned income, you'd have to be
Correct.
working and have earned income to do that.
Correct, but that is one route that you could look at.
And as we just kind of keep going through these questions we get, one thing people ask a lot about is, what's the 5-year rule? How does it affect Roth IRA withdrawals? And a couple things to think about. The Roth IRA is tax-free, and it has the withdrawals are tax-free on the interest as long as you have either opened the account or 5 years from the conversion. So if you open a Roth IRA, it's just from the day you opened it. If you do a conversion, it's 5 years from the date of conversion to get a tax-free distribution of the growth on the account, the capital gain. Your basis, however much you put into this, there's never any tax or penalty to take that out. So I think the 5-year rule for most people is not an issue, but if you're converting, every time you convert, it starts the clock on the next set of money for 5 years. Whereas a Roth IRA, a contributory Roth IRA, it's just day one, starts the clock moving on the 5-year window.
And that's something we talk people through, because there's really no reason, if you have the cash to do it, there's no reason to not do your Roth contributions. Because if you really need the money, and I'm not recommending people should take money out of their retirement accounts, but it's a great goal certainly for younger investors, and especially if you're married, max out 2 of those every year. Worst case scenario, if you need the money, you can take what you put in back out. So it's almost like it's almost an addition to your emergency fund. Now, you shouldn't use it that way, but if you had to, you could.
Back to the 5-year rule. If you're converting, the 5-year rule shouldn't be an issue. You shouldn't even be thinking about taking this money out within the next 5 years. You made a bad financial mistake if you have to take it out within 5 years. So question 4, I'm single. I'm leaving all my traditional IRAs to charities. Should I convert them to Roth IRA?
No.
Yeah, no.
No, if you're leaving it, just
talk to listeners through why you shouldn't convert it if you're leaving them to charity.
Yeah, so if there's a charity that's going to inherit that, they're not going to owe income tax on it. So there's no reason for you to realize that tax. And if you do, like if you converted it and then essentially donated it at your death through them being a beneficiary, you're going to give them less money, right? Because there's less in the account.
Well, it just makes no sense to convert it because you're killing all the tax benefit for everybody. The charity's getting it with no taxes due. You're giving it away without paying taxes. There's no benefit to either one of you to converting it. So the answer is really simple. If you are leaving all your money, you don't convert it.
There's no benefit.
Correct. Simple enough. There's no more to discuss. Like that's the whole point of leaving it to charity, is to get it out of your situation and give it to them in a very tax efficient manner. This, I think, is the one thing that a lot of people miss. And I think it's important to discuss with people that are either 63 or older. All right. Question 5, I'm doing a partial Roth conversion and trying to avoid higher Medicare surcharges, but we don't know what the income brackets will be. What can I do? So number 1, talk about what the Medicare surcharge is.
So the Medicare surcharge, it's income based. So any income, I don't have the brackets in front of me.
It's $212,000 for 2025, $206 for 2024.
Okay. So once you hit those income thresholds, you pay additional premium to Medicare.
It's different because it's your modified adjusted gross income. So when you do your tax return and you make $100,000, you get to either itemize or take a standard deduction. Most people take the standard deduction. That flows down and says, well, I made $100 after all my deductions. My taxable income is $65,000, whatever it is. The modified adjusted gross income doesn't work that way. You don't get the deductions. It's literally your top line number.
It's your gross. Yeah, it's your gross income.
Right. So you could have adjusted gross income of $90,000, but have a modified adjusted gross income of $150 or $160. So you can't just look at your adjusted gross income and say, well, I'm well below. No, it's not. So there's this little kind of balancing act between what tax bracket you're in. Are you in the 12, 22, 24? And the Medicare surcharge. And this is a surprise to a lot of people. And here's what I'll tell you. I think the Medicare surcharge is like $239 per person per month, in addition to what you're
that's
paying.
the first one.
That's the first one. It gets bigger. We'll post a chart. Maybe Molly can put a chart on the video to walk people through what it is. If you go, and this is in no way disparaging to an accountant or a CP or any of them, when they do a Roth conversion analysis, it is 100% tax-based. What makes sense for you to do from purely a tax standpoint? They will not look into or talk to you about, oh, this is what it's going to happen to your Medicare. And that's kind of where our job comes in, to tell people and show people, well, if you do this, here's all the other pieces of the puzzle and dominoes that are there that you're going to have to kind of contend with from an increasing cost standpoint. And for a lot of people, it's like, okay, well, you converted this, paid the tax, but now you're paying another $6,000 a year for a married couple and Medicare premiums. It's just another tax.
Which, in addition to the tax that you had to realize to do the conversion, and those income surcharges have 2 years of look back period, right? So your income when you're 63 determines your premium when you're 65. Your income when you're 65 determines your premium at age 67, right? So, and that's the other thing is people need to know that's going to be for 2 years. So if you do a huge conversion this year, 2 years from now, your Medicare premiums
going up
for the following 2 years are going to be based on that.
Think about this. You're 63 thinking you're doing everything well ahead of time, right? I'm not 65
until you
yet.
sign, until you go to pay your Part B.
So there's just so many things that you need to be aware of if you're going to do a Roth conversion. Consult with somebody before you do it. Now, if you're 30, it doesn't really matter, right? You have tons of time to make this work out. Most Roth conversions that people do before age 50 probably will turn out to be pretty good for them if they hold it. The closer you get to retirement, though, the numbers matter a lot more. Does it work out? Do the numbers make sense? How long am I going to defer it? What's the goal for the money? And that's what you have to start to think about.
And I'll say one other thing. There's nothing wrong with taking distributions and spending some of the money too.
No, not
right.
Or anything wrong with that.
Yeah. And especially because sometimes I've had this before where someone actually came to meet with us because of Roth conversions. And by the end of the process, we're not doing any Roth conversions. We're just taking money and spending it because that's what they need to live on. But they didn't have all of the extra Medicare. There was just a lack of knowledge around everything that goes into it, plus factoring in the age that they are. So there's just a lot more to it than just convert and pay the tax.
Yeah, it's not always conversion. Like sometimes withdrawal makes sense. So, when do you know? There's really like 5 ways you can look at a retirement withdrawal and some things to consider. Like 5 things I think you should consider if you're going to make the withdrawal from a retirement account or even doing a Roth conversion. But first,
what are those?
Is it necessary? Like, do I absolutely have to do it? And the answer is likely no for most cases. So, why are you taking the distribution? This takes me back to years ago. I met a family. This is probably like 12 years ago. They were retiring. And I'll never forget, came in and going to retire, so we need to start setting up our monthly distribution. and you are 6,000 a month coming in. That's what we did the plan for, and it's going to work. I said, that's great. Happy to do it. I asked a question though. I said, hey, what's in your bank account right now?
What was the answer?
Well, 100 and some thousand.
There you
I
go.
said, well, I go, let's do something. This is a practice I do with a lot of people. I said, how about for the first 3 to 6 months, you just take some money out of your bank account, and they quit working partial year. So it's like, why take more money to put them in a new tax bracket? So I just said, hey, let's live off your bank account for a few months, see how it goes. Come back in here and let's take a look at what the bank balance is. Because if you're living off your bank account, and they had Social Security checks coming in. So if you're living off your bank account and you come back 6 months later, it's pretty easy to figure out what your spending rate is. If you had 100 and now it's 90, well, okay.
Yeah,
10,000 divided by 6 months or whatever, you know what it is.
Yeah.
So they come back 6 months later. Sure enough, went from 100,000 to like 115,000. I'm like, no kidding. I said, do you still think you want to take the 6,000? And they looked at me and they're like, well, I guess we don't have to. Yeah, we don't need it. And then it came out that they wanted to keep saving money. They're like, well, we thought if we took the money that we could just keep saving money. And I said, yeah, I understand that, but you're actually just paying.
Into the bank account?
Yeah. Like, they're so used to saving money. I said, well, you're kind of just paying tax to put it into a bank account. Not really worthwhile to do.
That's interesting that they view their investments and their bank account savings as different.
Well, they view the bank as savings and it's safer. So anyway, account went up. So they've been retired now for about 8 years. Do you know how much money they've called up and actually taken out of this account?
And how long? 8 years?
8 years.
I don't know, 40
Zero.
grand?
Zero. They've never
nothing?
taken a dime out. So first, ask yourself, do I need it or do you just think you need it? So that's just a great question to start with. And then, if you're taking, are you on a budget? Like, do you have a budget figured out? And we talk about budgeting in retirement as probably one of the very most important things is having an idea of how much you're going to spend. It's hard to make a mistake. So if you have a budget, it helps you determine how much you should take out of this thing.
Well, and that was a good exercise that those folks went through because they had plenty of cash to live off. And 6 months went by and they only had their social security checks coming in and savings account balance went up. You would think the savings balance would go down, but I mean they're not spending much at all if that was the case.
Yeah. And I think the other thing is, do you have a plan for how to pay the tax if you're doing this pre-retirement age? Some people want to take we're only talking about people who are retired. If you're taking one pre-retirement age, do you have a plan to pay the tax and penalty?
If you take an early withdrawal?
Yeah.
You definitely should have a plan.
Well,
for
if
that.
you don't, you're going to take 35% out and cut down your tree. And then ultimately, if you're borrowing it from a 401k, what's your plan to actually pay it back? Like, if you think about it, everybody thinks, well, it's easy to do a distribution from a retirement plan or do a 401k loan and pay it back. Well, that's great until you lose your job or take a different one and have to make a big lump sum. So I just think, if you're looking at taking a withdrawal from your retirement plan, just look at a couple of the really easy questions. Do I need it? Do I have a budget so I'm not taking excess withdrawals? If I'm before 59 and a half, what's my plan to handle penalty and taxes? And if I'm doing a loan, how do I get it paid back? And it just goes to a lot of what we do for people and help them answer questions about retirement. I mean, this is really what this show was. It led from a question that I've got a lot. I always get the Roth IRA question a lot at the end of the year. We're trying to max out tax brackets, and there's a lot of moving parts. If you're older, not old, I mean, if you're 55 and older, there's more moving parts than if you're 30. But with that said, I want to thank everybody for listening to the show today. If anybody has any questions, please email us, follow us on social. If you like content like this, you can hit the subscribe button, keep getting our weekly content that we put out. I want to wish Elias a very happy 36th birthday.
Thank you.
And hopefully you get a birthday weekend like you would get at my house, because we subscribe to the birthday weekend theory. Not 1 day, but 3.
No, I get a day.
Okay.
Just 1 day. That's all I need.
Good. Well, I want to thank everybody for listening, and hopefully you tune in next time.
Securities and advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor, member FINRA SIPC. The opinions voiced in this show are for general information purposes only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which investments may be appropriate for you, consult with your attorney, accountant, and financial or tax advisor prior to investing. Premier Investments and Wealth Management and LPL Financial do not provide tax advice. Please consult your tax professional. Economic forecasts set forth may not develop as predicted, and there can be no guarantee that strategies promoted will be successful. There's no guarantee that a diversified portfolio will enhance overall returns or outperform a non-diversified portfolio. Diversification does not protect against market risk. Rebalancing a portfolio may cause investors to incur tax liabilities and/or transaction costs, and does not assure profit or protect against loss. All performance referenced is historical and is not a guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and cannot be invested into directly. There is no assurance that the techniques and strategies discussed are suitable for all investors or will yield positive outcomes. The purchase of certain securities may be required to affect some of the strategies. Investing involves risks, including possible loss of principal. Consult your tax professional about eligibility to Roth and traditional IRA contributions. Contributions and earnings in a Roth IRA can be withdrawn without paying taxes and penalties if the account owner is at least 59.5 and has held their Roth IRA for at least 5 years. Traditional IRA account owners have considerations to make before performing a Roth IRA conversion. These primarily include income tax consequences on the converted amount in the year of the conversion, withdrawal limitations from a Roth IRA, and income limitations for future contributions to a Roth IRA. In addition, if you are required to take a minimum distribution, RMD, in the year you convert, you must do so before converting to a Roth IRA. This information is not intended to be a substitute for specific individualized tax advice. We suggest that you discuss your specific tax issues with a qualified tax advisor